Hello and welcome to LTV News. I'm Stephanie J. Bevington and these are today's top stories. Syria says dozens of terrorists have been killed in a Damascus suburb. "29 people are killed in Pakistan by bomb blasts." And Israeli troops leave Gaza border as a truce takes hold. Let's start with some news from the Middle East. Syria says it's killed dozens of terrorists in a Damascus suburb. It's believed the operation took place yesterday and lasted for 2 days. However, fighting continued across the country as armed opposition groups continue calling for the downfall of the nation's president, Bashar al-Assad. The following report has more on the details.
Syrian armed forces claim to have killed dozens of terrorists yesterday in this Damascus suburb of Diriyah. It's an area which in recent times has seen a number of airstrikes on rebel hideouts. According to state media, the rebels, who for over a year now have been leading an armed campaign against Damascus, were using local residents as human shields. Although there was some sense of calm in this area today, most of the rest of the country is still engulfed by violence. Aid groups say that the 20-month conflict has left around 36,000 people dead and displaced over 100,000 others.
There were celebratory scenes on the streets of Gaza last night as Egypt announced a truce between Israel and Hamas. The 8-day conflict led to the death of around 150 Palestinians and 5 Israelis. Now many are just hoping that the fragile peace lasts.
Thousands of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip took to the streets yesterday evening to celebrate a truce between Hamas and Israel. The truce took effect at around 9 p.m. Gaza time, as announced by Egyptian Foreign Minister Mohammed Kal-Amar, as the agreement was reached in the Egyptian capital of Cairo. Gazans honked their horns and fired celebratory shots into the air. They also marched to Shifa Hospital to visit the wounded. The last Israeli airstrike and the last rocket fired by the Hamas armed wing both occurred last night at around 10 p.m. local time. However, despite the truce, many here are still skeptical, believing that it doesn't take much for a war to break out again.
As Palestinians in Gaza celebrated today, the Israeli ground troops began to leave positions along the Gaza border after a truce with the territory's Hamas rulers came into effect. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he had agreed to the truce but told his people a tougher approach might be required in the future. Both sides quickly began offering different interpretations of ceasefire, brokered by Egypt's new government and backed by the United States, highlighting the many potential areas of discourse. If the truce holds, it will give the 1.7 million Gazians respite from the days of ferocious airstrikes and halt rocket salvos from militants that have unnerved 1 million people in southern Israel and reached Tel Aviv and Jerusalem for the first time. Moving on to world news now. A series of 3 deadly bomb attacks in Pakistan killed at least 29 people, with dozens more wounded. 2 of the attacks targeted mourners gathered for the Shia rituals at mosques in Karachi and Rawalpindi. It's believed the Pakistan Taliban were behind the attacks.
It was on these streets that a suicide bomber killed at least 8 people at a Shia procession in the Pakistani city of Rawalpindi last night. Police said that at least 5 people were killed and 25 wounded, including children. The attack came hours after 2 bomb blasts killed at least 3 people near a gathering of Shias in Pakistan's commercial hub Karachi. Hardline Sunni militant groups linked to Al-Qaeda have in recent months stepped up attacks against Pakistan's minority Shias, who they regard as non-Muslims. Pakistan's military, one of the world's biggest, has failed to break the back of militant groups, despite launching several offences against their strongholds in the northwest.
Much of Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, was shut down today as the country is prepared to host a summit of the country's developing 8 countries known as the D8. The meeting aims us to strengthen ties between developing nations. However, as the following report explains, feeling on the streets of Pakistan were tense.
Pakistani authorities declared a public holiday in the capital, Islamabad, today to ensure maximum security during a crucial summit of the developing 8 countries. Earlier this week, police began setting up roadblocks across all roads leading to the red zone in which the President's house, Parliament and diplomatic buildings are located. Islamabad police also banned the entry of heavy traffic and loading vehicles into the capital and made special arrangements to divert the flow of traffic towards alternative routes. The D8 group, which includes Bangladesh, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Malaysia, Nigeria, Pakistan and Turkey, was formed in 1997 to advance development cooperation amongst the member nations. It's also intended to increase trade and investment among the member countries, which are mainly Muslim states, with an estimated total population of 1 billion people.
A mass rally was held outside the European Union headquarters yesterday as EU employees voiced their anger at planned cuts. Protesters believe that the spending reductions will hinder the implementation of EU policies.
Hundreds of European Union employees yesterday rallied in front of the EU headquarters in Brussels against a recent proposal by the organisation to cut its spending. The proposal, opposed by several member states, will likely be discussed at the EU summit today and tomorrow. Strikers expressed their anger towards the proposal, which they believe will hinder the implementation of EU policies. With €10 billion of staffing cuts trimming down the organisation since 2004, strikers said the EU will not be able to maintain its usual ability to function with any further cuts. Talks on the European Union's 2013 budget collapsed earlier this month, as its austerity-minded member states refused to plug a funding gap of about €9 billion in EU 2012 budget. The shortfall includes about €1.5 billion, which should have been paid to Italy, Poland and Spain to compensate victims of flooding and job cuts.
A bomb exploded outside the Athens home of a Greek deputy prosecutor early this morning, damaging houses and cars. The explosive device was placed in the yard of the house in a quiet northern Athens suburb, damaging the windows, side wall and door of the home. 3 houses and 2 cars on the city block were also damaged when it exploded. Over the last decade, small makeshift bombs have been exploded in Greece, either from criminal or domestic terror attacks, targeting businesses, authorities or politicians. Anti-establishment groups have also carried out with small attacks with gas canisters, yet there are rarely serious injuries. Now here's some finance news. Afghanistan's local currency, Afghani, is now on the decline and many citizens are hedging their bets, although others, including the World Bank itself, have predicted that the Afghan economy will take a hit when the Americans withdraw in 2014. At the Money Exchange Union, which is the largest currency trading centre in Afghanistan, dollar amounts ranging from 10 to 50 million are moved through the building every day. In the country, the World Bank estimates over 90% of GDP comes from foreign aid, thus fears are already rising that US dollars will be out of reach in 2014. Cross-border trade also poses a problem. Much of Afghanistan illegal trade is done with its neighbouring countries, Iran and Pakistan, and in their currency. With the American-led sanctions against Iran, legal imports and exports to them are off limits. Now the Iranians are crossing the border, buying up the US dollars themselves, dropping the Afghani even further. Now for some sports news. South Africa boast a 100% in their Northern Hemisphere tour, but coach Heinek Meyer admitted he was worried ahead of the final test against England at Twickenham on Saturday.
I always know this last game is going to be a very tough game, but by saying that, I really want the guys to dig deep. I need one more great performance out of them. They always lift themselves for England, but I must say I am worried. I can see the guys mentally, it's really been a long season, but knowing these guys, they really will stand up to the challenge. They're warriors. They want to play for their country and for the for the guys next to them. But I can see, training-wise, we just managed them through this week. Again, this afternoon, a lot of the guys won't be able to train, so this is going to take a huge effort for them mentally to be up for the last game.
Now let's take a look at the world of arts and culture. For those looking to glitz up Christmas this year, one jewellery store in downtown Tokyo has just the thing. A pure gold revolving decoration complete with Disney characters if you can afford the $4.2 million US price tag. The decoration was made by Ginza Tanika, a jewellery store that specialises in gold accessories. The store works in collaboration with Walt Disney Japan to commemorate the 110th anniversary of Walt Disney. The decoration is called Disney Gold Christmas Tree and is made up of 40 kilograms of pure gold, measuring about 2.4 metres high and 1.2 metres across. Although the price may be out of reach for many, shoppers still visited the store just to get a look at the golden decoration. Hello Kitty, Spider-Man and Charlie Brown were all gathered on the same New York City block yesterday. It was the evening before the 86th Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and these famous helium balloons were being inflated and readied for their annual outing as New Yorkers and tourists watched excitedly. The balloons have been part of this famous parade since 1927, and for many years now, the giant character balloons that children love so much are shown blown up and brought to life. The enormous balloons take up 2 full city blocks.
It's just a great way to get into the holiday mood with everyone, and there's so much that happened before Thanksgiving, so I think everyone needed something to make Thanksgiving a little bit more happy this year. So this is a great way, and the kids love it.
That's all we have time for today, but before we go, let's take a look over today's top stories. Syria says dozens of terrorists have been killed in a Damascus suburb. "29 people are killed in Pakistan by bomb blasts." And Israeli troops leave Gaza border as a truce takes hold. Thank you for watching. For more information, do visit our website on www.levant.tv. Join us tomorrow at the same time. Until then, from all of us at LTV News, goodbye.